The girl who cried for the dead. From the moment Claire was born, her cries never stopped. While most newborns quieted with warmth, milk, or sleep, Claire wailed through the night, through the day, and into the hearts of those who tried to understand her. Midwives shrugged. Doctors pressed stethoscopes to her chest, shined lights in her eyes, and whispered among themselves in white-laced corridors. "She's perfectly healthy," they always said. "But she sounds like she's mourning," her mother once whispered, exhausted and pale. As if something's already been taken from her. Her father would cradle her in calloused arms, pacing beside the window of their modest home, murmuring lullabies soaked in worry. Her cries pierced everything: meals, sleep, silence. But then, at exactly 3:33 am every night, she would go quiet. As if someone had told her to hush. They lived in a quiet town on the edge of the forest, a place of fog-kissed trees and brittle winters. People were kind, but wary. The kind of worry that came from old stories and deeper instincts. The kind that made neighbors draw their curtains a little tighter when they passed by Clyde's house. By the time she turned 7, Clyde had stopped crying. But silence didn't mean peace. Instead, she began talking to people no one else could see. "I like Olanda," she said one morning over oatmeal, speaking to the air beside her chair. "He says he used to play the violin." Her mother dropped her spoon. "Who's Olanda?" she asked softly. Clyde blinked, as if confused. "He died in the river. He doesn't like water anymore." Her father's jaw tensed. "You imagine that, Clyde?" But Clyde just smiled, tilting her head like she was listening to someone whispering behind her ear. "He says you imagine him," she said, then giggled. They tried not to panic. Children had imaginary friends, they reminded themselves. It was normal. It was fine. But Clyde's friends had backstories. Birth dates. Graves. She once pointed to a picture in an old local newspaper of a young boy who drowned in 1964 and said, "That's Olanda." He was waiting for someone to talk to. That night, her mother sobbed quietly in the laundry room, clinging to a shirt still warm from the dryer. Her father poured a drink he hadn't touched in years. School was worse. Other children avoided Clyde like she carried a sickness. One boy said she smelled like the air before funerals. Another girl cried when Clyde told her that her grandmother, who was still alive, missed her already. Word spread. The teacher tried to protect her, but fear was more contagious than compassion. Soon, Clyde was always alone. Her drawings were dark and detailed: gravestones, wilted flowers, eyes in the walls. Once, she painted a picture of a woman hanging from the school's attic ceiling. The janitor quit the next day after discovering a noose in the very same spot. No one asked questions. But everyone whispered. Clyde didn't mind being alone. She found comfort in shadows, in the hush between the wind and the trees. Ghost stories were her lullabies. She would sit in her room, legs folded beneath her, eyes closed, and listen to the creaks of the house as if they spoke her name. But her parents were desperate. They wanted their daughter back, or some version of her that belonged to this world. So they arranged for a playdate with the neighbor's daughter, Kemi, a warm and talkative girl with a laugh like bells and cheeks always kissed by sun. Kemi's mother agreed, though a flicker of hesitation passed her face when she learned who the playdate was for. "She's just a little different," Clyde's mom said. Kemi didn't mind. She was 12 and curious, a natural storyteller who believed even monsters deserve someone to talk to. The first day they met, Clyde didn't say a word. She sat by the window, watching a crow pick at something in the yard, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. Kemi tried everything: jokes, games, silly songs, but Clyde only blinked once and said, "Your grandfather follows you. He's kind." Kemi froze. Her grandfather had passed 6 months earlier. She had never told anyone. Instead of fear, something like awe bloomed in her chest. She sat beside Clyde and, without fully understanding why, began to tell her a story, a made-up tale about a girl who could speak to the dead and the ghost who taught her to dance. Clyde didn't move, but her eyes shimmered. The next week, Kemi came back. Then the next. Their stories grew, wild adventures with ghost pirates, shadow libraries, and skies that cried when the moon was lonely. Slowly, Clyde softened. She spoke more, laughed softly sometimes, and even played a board game, though halfway through, she murmured, "Olanda's cheating," and moved the piece back. One day, as they lay on the floor drawing, Clyde looked up from her paper and said, "You glow, you know." Kemi blinked. "What?" "In your chest," Clyde said matter-of-factly. "It's gold. Like a little sun inside you. No one else I've seen has it." Kemi smiled nervously. "Well, thanks. I guess." Clyde tilted her head. "It's not always a good thing. Sometimes light draws things that don't like it." Kemi laughed. "Are you trying to scare me?" Clyde looked down at her drawing. "No. I like your light. It makes Olanda quiet when he gets restless." Kemi didn't know what to say, so she just kept coloring. But later that night, when she was brushing her teeth, she stared at her reflection for a long time, wondering what gold in a chest might look like and who might be watching it. Over time, Kemi became the only person Clyde trusted. And in return, Clyde shared pieces of her world. She told Kemi about the ghost who gathered in the woods behind her house, about the woman who cried blood at the town's old mill, about the little boy who followed the mailman every morning asking if his mother had sent a letter yet. Kemi listened. She never mocked. And Clyde bloomed in that space, still strange, still silent in crowds, but calmer. Lighter. Yet something hovered always at the edge. A silence inside the silence. Clyde started to draw things she didn't understand, symbols that made her parents nervous. Eyes that opened within other eyes. Names no one taught her. One evening, she whispered to Kemi, "They say I'm not supposed to know yet." "Know what?" Kemi asked. Clyde's eyes darkened. "Where I came from." Olanda stopped visiting soon after that. Clyde said he was scared. Of what? She wouldn't say, the secret of the golden light. Clyde never told Kemi about the golden light. She wanted to, more than once, she'd open her mouth to speak, to point to the chest where it flickered and pulsed like a heartbeat of the sun, but the words tangled in her throat. Something warned her. Not a voice, but a sensation, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing the wind behind her is stronger than she thought. So she said nothing. She didn't mention the way Olanda now hovered farther back, wary when Kemi came near. Or how the air sometimes grew thick when Kemi laughed. There was power in that glow, Clyde could feel it, like a pull, like a note vibrating too high for anyone else to hear. It wasn't bad, exactly. But it wasn't normal. Not even by Clyde's standards. Sometimes, when Kemi touched her shoulder or handed her a pencil, the glow would spark brighter. And Clyde's hands would tremble with something she didn't understand, fear. Or longing. She didn't know. What she did know was that Kemi was helping her live. Helping her feel the world again. Before Kemi, the world was shades of grey. Now, there were colors, even if they were strange and sometimes too bright. Together, they explored the woods. Told stories under the willow tree. Climbed the rusted fence behind the library and imagined kingdoms in the shadows. Kemi brought light, laughter, and the gift of being seen. In return, Clyde gave her stories, real ones, whispered at dusk, about the other world no one else could see. But she never told her everything. Not about the way spirits watched her from rooftops. Not about the girl with hollow eyes who sat outside the school every Tuesday, mouthing a prayer that had no words. Not about the man with a stitched smile who stood outside her bedroom window and never blinked. There were layers to the world. Clyde walked all of them. and it was exhausting. The dead didn't sleep. Some were quiet, murmuring memories to themselves. Others screamed without sound. Some followed her for hours. A few just stared, waiting for something she never had the courage to ask about. She wore her fear like a second skin, hidden, but always pressing in. Her parents thought she was getting better. They smiled more. Her mother baked again. Her father whistled while fixing the door hinge. No one knew that Clyde still woke at 3:33 a.m. each night, soaked in sweat, surrounded by figures that shimmered like smoke. And Olanda had changed. She had always felt older than the others, wiser, sadder. A young girl with curled black hair and eyes too knowing. But lately, her eyes were heavy. Distant. And her voice, once curious and teasing, now trembled with something like despair. Clyde found her sitting on the edge of her bed one evening, humming a melody that didn't belong to this time. "You're fading," Clyde whispered, reaching out a hand that passed through Olanda's shoulder. "I'm tired," Olanda said. "So tired." "I'll help you," Clyde said. "Tell me how." There was a long silence. Then, in a voice small as a sigh, Olanda said, "They never found me." Clyde's heart clenched. "My body," she continued. "It's still there. I don't even know where. I wandered for so long, trying to remember. Trying to find someone who remembered me. But no one did." Clyde sat very still. "I was 10, Olanda said. I liked music. I followed the wrong sound one night, and I never came home." Clyde's voice was a whisper. "Why didn't anyone look for you?" "They did," Olanda said bitterly. "But they didn't find what they wanted. So they stopped." The weight of her words sank into Clyde's bones. "I promise," Clyde said, looking straight into the ghost eyes. "I'll find you. I'll bring you peace." For a moment, Olanda said nothing. Then, quietly, "Thank you." Clyde felt something shift in the air, a slight lifting, like the first gust before a storm breaks. But promises have a cost. 2 days later, while walking through the Saturday market with Kemi and her mother, Clyde felt it. A ripple. Like the ground had flinched. The market was bright and noisy, filled with colors and smells and laughter. People sold honey, scarves, handmade soap, woven baskets. But Clyde couldn't focus on any of it. Because she saw him. A tall man with coppery hair and a bright blue coat. His name echoed around the stalls, Chaba. He was charming. Smiling. Shaking hands. Children laughed around him. Women blushed. Old men clapped him on the back. Everyone adored him. But Clyde saw the truth. His shadow wasn't his. It moved differently. Twitched when he smiled. It stretched in directions it shouldn't. And in its hollow, flickering form, Clyde saw a face, not his, but someone else's. Someone wrong. It had eyes made of void and a mouth filled with teeth that never stopped moving. Clyde froze. Kemi noticed. "What's wrong?" Clyde's lips barely moved. "Don't look." Kemi followed her gaze anyway. Chaba turned then, and for the briefest moment, his eyes met Clyde's. Not the way people usually look at children. No warmth. No curiosity. Recognition. His smile flickered. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. He turned back to the old woman he was talking to, laughing as if nothing had happened. But Clyde knew. He saw her. Truly saw. She grabbed Kemi's hand. "We need to go." Kemi's mother turned, confused. "Girls. What's wrong?" Clyde didn't answer. Her legs were already moving, dragging Kemi between stalls, past ribbons and candles and jars of jam, until they reached the alley behind the fishmonger. Only then did she stop, her breath ragged. What happened? Kemi asked, panting. Cly swallowed hard. That man. Chaba. He's not what they think. What do you mean? Cly hesitated. His shadow isn't his. Kemi blinked. Cly, I know you see things, but... Cly looked her dead in the eyes. It was watching me. Not him. Me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Something was coming. She could feel it now. Ever since she promised Alanda. Ever since she noticed the light in Kemi's chest. Something had been stirred. Cly didn't know what Chaba was. But whatever he served, whatever lived in that twisted shadow, had noticed her. And it didn't like her scene. The man with two shadows. It started with a subtle change in Kemi, so subtle, only Cly noticed. She laughed less. Smiled more, but the smiles were tighter. Her stories, once bursting with imagination and nonsense, became strangely romantic. Her golden light, once radiant and warm, flickered now, dimmed when she was near him. Chaba. He had become a regular presence in their town after the market day. More fundraisers, more charity walks, more community speeches. And then, like a shadow sliding beneath the door, he was part of their lives. Cly watched helplessly as Kemi drifted toward him. He's charming, Kemi would say, twirling her hair and sighing. And kind. You should hear him talk about the forest cleanup project. He cares, Cly. But Cly knew better. She'd seen his shadow, a parasite wearing skin, charming the town like a snake playing a flute. The night she saw him again, he winked at her. She felt it in her bones. She tried to tell Kemi. Tried to explain that something was wrong, that Chaba's energy rippled like oil over water, that he smelled like decaying roses and salt, that the golden light in Kemi's chest dimmed when he touched her hand. But Kemi only laughed, brushing it off. You're jealous, she said one afternoon under the willow tree. It's okay. I'd be too. Cly flinched. Jealous of what? Of me. Being normal. Being wanted. Kemi said it lightly, like it was a joke, but her eyes didn't smile. Cly stared at her. The golden light, once a sun, now flickered like a dying candle. Cly had to know. Had to be sure. So one night, she followed him. She waited until his speech at the town hall ended and watched from the trees as he shook hands, kissed babies, signed flyers. He was a magician of affection. Then he slipped away. Cly followed, barefoot on the grass, her breath like glass in her throat. The moon hung low and red above the hills. Chaba walked to the old chapel, long abandoned, its stone walls cracked and crawling with moss. He stood in the doorway. Then something happened. His back arched. His arms twisted at an unnatural angle. His head tilted too far. And then, the shadow peeled away. Cly's stomach flipped. From his back, a second form poured out. Smoky, towering, ancient. A thing made of bone and mist, with eyes like boiling tar and a smile like knives. The true spirit. It hissed, stretching itself, whispering in a language Cly didn't know but understood. Hunger. The word echoed in her skull. It hungered. Chaba's body slumped like a puppet on a string, and the spirit wrapped around it lovingly, possessively, like a man cradling his reflection. Then it looked at her. Not Chaba. It. The creature. Cly's knees buckled. She clutched the tree trunk beside her. Her lungs refused to move. Run, a voice inside her whispered. Run. But she couldn't, not until she knew what it wanted. And then it spoke. I see you, little lantern. Its voice wasn't sound, it was pressure, a sickness in her ears, a heat behind her eyes. Then it vanished. The next morning, Kemi announced it over breakfast, we're getting married. Cly dropped her spoon. Her parents clapped politely. Kemi's mother squealed. Chaba kissed Kemi's hand with theatrical flourish. Cly stared at the golden light in Kemi's chest. It sputtered once. Then dimmed even further. Panic bloomed in her throat like fire. Later that evening, in the safety of her room, Cly called for Olanda. The ghost hovered near her window, faded and frayed like smoke from a dying fire. Olanda, she whispered. He's not human. Olanda's face tightened. No. He's not. What is he? The ghost's voice was slow, heavy. A wraith. An ancient spirit. Fed by purity. By hope. By light. Cly felt the words settle into her chest like ice. Why Kemi? Olanda's eyes shimmered. The golden light in her, it's rare. Not many are born with it. It's like a flame of life, strong enough to attract things from the veil. She's good, Cly whispered. And he'll drain that goodness, Olanda said. Until she's empty. A shell. Cly trembled. Why don't people see it? They never do, Olanda said sadly. He chooses places where kindness blinds. Cly stood up, fist clenched. Then I'll stop it. I'll tell everyone, expose him, make them see. But the moment she spoke to Kemi, everything collapsed. They were walking past the riverbank. Cly had rehearsed the words all night. Her heart thundered in her chest. Kemi, she said. Please. You can't marry him. Kemi looked amused. Oh. He's not what he says he is. He's something else. Something wrong. Kemi's amusement dropped. You're doing this again. Doing what? Making things up. Ruining good things because you can't understand them. That's not true. You've always done this, Cly. Kemi snapped. You push people away. You live in stories and shadows. And you can't stand that I'm happy. Cly's throat burned. It's not jealousy. It's truth. I saw him. I know. Kemi's eyes flared. You're sick, Cly. You've always been sick. The words struck like a blade. Silence fell. Kemi turned and walked away, her figure disappearing between the trees, her golden light dimming behind her. Cly stood alone. The wind stirred. Olanda appeared beside her, voice like frost. We have to act soon. Cly's hands shook. Her eyes burned with tears. How do I save her? She whispered. When she doesn't want to be saved. The curse of the wedding night. Cly stood outside the bakery where Kemi's name had just been written in rose petal icing on a white wedding cake. She hadn't been invited. Not to the rehearsal. Not to the dress fitting. Not to the ceremony. The silence was final. A wound sealed shut. Her room, once filled with scraps of shared laughter and ghost stories, now echoed with whispers, dozens of them. Unrest spirits had begun to crowd around her, drawn by the rift between her and Kemi. Some whispered warnings. Some begged for help. Some screamed without words. She could barely sleep. Make it stop, she whispered one night, curled in bed, her breath fogging up the glass. Olanda, please. The spirit hovered gently at her window, as always, glowing faintly blue in the dark. But even Olanda seemed dimmer, heavier, as though the world beyond was pulling her more strongly. You're opening, Olanda whispered. More than ever before. Opening to what? To them, she said softly. The spirit world. You see what others deny. But now, it sees you back. Cly turned her face into her pillow. What good is that? Kemi won't listen. And he'll kill her. Then make her see, Olanda said. Cly looked up slowly. I can teach you how to open the veil, Cly. How to let them speak for themselves. Cly nodded, slowly. She was ready. The wedding day bloomed like a lie, golden sunlight, blue skies, and music that made people smile too wide. Everyone was dressed in their best. The hall overflowed with neighbors, friends, and strangers drawn by Chaba's charm. Flowers lined the aisles, white and blood red. Kemi walked down in a dress that shimmered like starlight. But to Cly, who stood just beyond the gate, ignored by all, it felt like a funeral. She clutched a pendant Alonda had helped her craft, black obsidian wrapped in silver thread. A token tied to the veil. Around her, spirits gathered like smoke. She took a breath and stepped inside. Heads turned. The music faltered. What's she doing here? Someone hissed. Someone laughed. Someone whispered, that's the girl who sees ghosts. Cly walked slowly to the center of the aisle. Her voice, when she spoke, shook, but not with fear. With every word I speak, the dead listen. Kemi gasped. Cly held up the pendant. Chaba is not a man. He is a spirit, a wraith, who feeds on the pure. He drains light. He stole lives before. He will do it again. Laughter burst from the crowd. Nervous, sharp. A few people scoffed. Someone called her parents. She's mentally ill. This is a wedding, not a seance. But Cly didn't flinch. She closed her eyes and opened the veil. The pendant glowed. The air turned ice cold. Candles flickered. A sudden wind tore through the hall, sending petals flying. Windows cracked. And then they came. Ghosts. Dozens. Pale forms floated through the walls, men, women, children. Each with eyes like ash and mouths sealed with sorrow. Screams erupted. Guests stumbled back. Kemi clutched her chest as the golden light inside her pulsed, reacting to the spirits. But Chaba only smiled. And then, bowed. You should not have come, he whispered, his voice now layered with something ancient. The room fell silent. He turned to Kemi. My love, he said softly. Shall we continue? Kemi looked at Cly. Torn. Terrified. But she did not move. Cly's heart cracked. She ran. That night, thunder roared across the hills. The wedding guests, shaken, blamed the storm for the madness. Kemi and Chaba retreated to a lodge by the lake, alone. Cly stood at her window, breathless. And then, she heard it. A scream. Sharp. Piercing. It didn't come from outside. It came from within her. She grabbed the pendant. Alonda appeared, pale and flickering. She's in danger, Cly said. You must go. But the spirits, they're angry. Unrest. They will follow you, Alonda said. Let them. The lodge sat in eerie silence. Cly pushed open the door, every step dragging like she was wading through fog. On the floor, blood. Kemi lay sprawled in white lace, her mouth open in a scream that had frozen on her lips. Her eyes glowed dimly. The golden light in her chest sputtered like a dying star. And Chaba, or what wore his skin, stood above her. He turned. The room walked. He no longer looked human. Bones cracked beneath the flesh. His eyes turned black. From his back, a second form unraveled, tall, shadowy, twisted. You, it hissed. Again. Cly stepped forward. Let her go. You hold no power here. I hold them, she whispered. The pendant bound. Behind her, the forgotten spirits rushed in, moaning, screaming, clawing through the walls. Ghosts Chaba had consumed in decades past. Faces of mothers. Of children. Of lovers. He hissed, recoiling. No, he growled. They are mine. You used them, Cly said, voice rising. But they remember. And they're angry. Alonda's voice echoed beside her. Call them, Cly. Let them rise. She dropped the pendant to the ground. A blinding light erupted. Spirits poured forward, into Chaba, engulfing him, screaming, burning. He thrashed, snarled, howled as his form twisted, cracked, broke. The veil shimmered. And then, shattered. Light exploded from his body. And he was gone. Just gone. Cly fell to her knees. Kemi gasped for breath, the golden light inside her flaring suddenly, brighter than ever. She looked at Cly. And wept. I saw them, she whispered. All of them. Everything. Cly nodded, silent. Alonda's form stood in the corner, eyes glowing softly. Kemi turned. Is that? She's my friend, Cly said. The first one. They sat together, broken and healing. Outside, dawn cracked the sky. Aftermath. News spread quickly. The lodge burned down. An electrical fire. No bodies found. No wedding photos shared. But the town changed. People looked at Cly differently. With fear. With awe. Kemi never spoke of the wedding again, but she visited Cly often, always carrying some flowers. Always with a story to tell. As for Olanda, her soul grew stronger. And one evening, with tears in her eyes, she smiled. They found my body, she whispered. A construction site near the marsh. They'll bury me next week. Cly held her hand. I'll be there, she said. And as Olanda faded for the final time, a single word echoed softly in the wind. Free. The body beneath the tree. The sun rose over the village in a veil of gold, but inside Kemi's hospital room, the light meant nothing. She lay motionless, eyes closed, chest barely rising. The doctors called it a coma. But Cly knew better. Kemi wasn't asleep. She was caught. Somewhere between this world and the next. She's waiting for something, Cly whispered, sitting beside her. A reason to come back. Alanda's final words echoed in her mind, they found my body. But the police had buried a name, not a truth. What they found were bones. No spirit moved on. Because Olanda wasn't at peace. Not yet. Cly stood. It was time to finish what she started. She followed the pool deep into the forest, where birds no longer sang and the air felt thick with breathless silence. Olanda's memory had shown her flashes, roots like fingers, vines like hair, and a tree with bark as dark as ash. There was no trail. Only instinct. Spirits whispered on the wind as she passed. Some familiar. Some, not. Her pendant glowed faintly, guiding her through tangled paths, thorns, and shadows. And then, she found the tree. It stood alone in a glade, old and towering, with gnarled branches twisting like broken limbs. At its base, vines paused, alive, as though guarding something sacred. Cly approached. But the world shifted. Visions and trials. The sky turned violet. The air shimmered. Suddenly, Cly stood in her old bedroom. Kemi sat on the bed, smiling brightly, holding a cupcake with a candle. You made it, Kemi said. You didn't forget my birthday. Cly blinked. The forest was gone. This isn't real. Kemi giggled. You always ruin the moment. She stood, holding out her hand. Stay here, Cly. With me. Just us. A chill ran down Cly's spine. Something about Kemi's eyes, too wide, too perfect. She stepped back. You're not her. The world rippled. Kemi's smile twisted into a grin full of teeth, far too many. The illusion shattered. Now she was in a hallway lined with mirrors. Each reflection showed her bleeding, lost, broken. A voice echoed, "You're not enough. You failed her. You'll fail again." Cly closed her eyes. "I came here for truth, not lies." The pendant paused. And the mirrors cracked, then shattered into dust. The forest returned. And before her, the vines receded. The ground softened. And a shape, wrapped in tattered cloth and time, lay beneath the roots. The body beneath the tree. Bones. Small. Fragile. Clothes half decayed, skin long gone. But Cly knew it was Olanda. A locket still hung from the skeleton's neck, silver and oval, with a faded picture of a little girl inside. Cly knelt. Tears ran down her face as she touched the earth around the body. "I found you," she whispered. "I'm here." A wind stirred the leaves. The forest sighed. A faint blue glow appeared beside her, Olanda's spirit, quiet and solemn. "This is where it ended," she said. "He lured me here." I screamed, but no one came. Cly placed a hand on her ghost's shoulder. "I'm here now. I'll help you go home." The ritual. Cly returned to the village and found her. The Naya, a local priestess of the dead, old, wise, and feared. Naya lived in the hills, with jars of bones and incense that never stopped burning. She looked at Cly without asking questions. "I need to help a spirit pass on," Cly said. "I know." Naya handed her a small bag, herbs, oils, and a scroll of rites passed down for generations. "Do it under moonlight," she warned. "And do not falter." That night, beneath a sky lit with stars, Cly returned to the tree. She cleaned the bones gently, washed them with water and ash, placed them on a white cloth. She sprinkled lavender, rosemary, and a pinch of soil from her family's grave. She whispered Olanda's name. Once. Twice. 3 times. The wind stilled. And the tree bloomed. Just for a moment, white flowers, ghostly and glowing, erupted from the bark, as if the tree remembered her too. Olanda's spirit knelt beside her own body. Tears ran from eyes that no longer had a body to cry from. "Thank you," she whispered. And she began to rise. Light poured from her chest, soft, golden, beautiful. Cly stepped back, breath caught in her throat. "Wait," she called. "Before you go, will Kemi be okay?" Olanda's smile was radiant. "She will. I kept her light safe, but now it must return." The light returns. As Olanda rose toward the sky, the golden beam in her heart lifted too, spinning like a star, fast and free. It flew through the trees, across rivers and rooftops, through the village and into the quiet room where Kemi lay. It entered her chest gently. And her eyes opened. Back at the tree, Cly stood alone again. The forest was still. But inside, she felt something shift. A warmth. A silence. Peace. The next morning, Kemi walked through Cly's door, pale but alive. They stood facing each other for a long moment. "I remember," Kemi whispered. "Everything." Cly smiled softly. And they embraced, the girl who sees and speaks. The hospital lights flickered once, then steadied. Kemi blinked, slowly waking as if from a dream soaked in fog and thunder. Cly sat in the chair beside her, wide-eyed and still. "Cly." Kemi's voice was thin. Fragile. Was it real? Was any of it real? Cly leaned forward, her voice shaking. "All of it." And Kemi remembered. Chaba's touch, the burning chill in her chest, her light dimming, and then a flood of warmth as it returned. She remembered being trapped between worlds. A golden thread held her. Cly had held her. "You saved me," she whispered. Cly only nodded. For a long while, they didn't speak. They just held each other's hands, tightly, silently, as the sun rose through the blinds. Village truth. Whispers traveled faster than fire in dry grass. People talked, first in private, then in public. The quiet girl with the hollow eyes. She speaks to the dead. Some avoided Cly, crossing the road when she walked by, casting words behind their backs. Others, grieving mothers, broken widowers, children who cried in their sleep, came to her door in silence, clutching photos and last letters. Cly never turned anyone away. She didn't claim power. She didn't claim wisdom. Only that she listened when no one else could. She guided spirits toward peace the way others guided loved ones home through the dark. With patience. With love. Some she helped with words. Some with dreams. Some with song. Her calling. Each soul was different. A boy who drowned still searched the pond for his toy boat. A woman in white waited for a husband who'd never return. A soldier who didn't know the war was over kept marching, until Cly told him. Sometimes she cried with them. Sometimes she stood with them under the rain until they were ready. And when they were, she watched them fade, into light, into the wind, into memory. Soon, the villagers began leaving flowers outside her door. Not out of fear. But thanks. Still, Cly kept to herself. Kemi was her only constant, now her anchor. Together, they lit candles each night. Not to ward off the dead, but to welcome them home. Final test. One afternoon, a hunched woman appeared at the edge of the forest, leaning on a twisted cane carved with runes older than memory. Her skin was wrinkled like river stones, her eyes glassy but glowing. "You're the girl who sees," she said. Cly bowed respectfully. "I hear, too." The woman studied her carefully. "Do you know who you are?" "I'm just someone who didn't look away." "No. You are spirit-bound. One in a long line of watchers, seers, guardians between the living and the lost. We do not choose the gift. It chooses us." Cly's breath caught. "But, my family said I was broken." The woman smiled. "Broken? Child, you were born open. That frightens those who live closed." She handed Cly a stone etched with a spiral. "Your mother's mother had this gift. And her mother before that. But they buried it. Feared it. You kept it alive." The woman touched her forehead with the stone. "Use it well. Speak for those who have no voice." And she vanished before Cly could ask her name. Legacy and redemption. Cly's parents came to her one rainy evening. Not to scold. Not to shame. They stood silently, soaked from the downpour, holding hands like they used to when Cly was a child. Her mother spoke first. "I saw the lights. The ones that follow you." Her voice cracked. "I never believed. I thought, if I ignored it, it would go away." Her father took a step forward. "But it never did. And you carried it alone." He looked at her the way he never had before, not as something fragile, but someone strong. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Cly nodded. And led them inside. Later, Kemi leaned against her on the porch. "You're not alone anymore." "I know," Cly said. "For the first time. I believe that." Closing scene. That night, Cly stood at the edge of the river, barefoot, her toes sinking into the cool earth. Ghost lanterns floated across the water, tiny orbs of pale fire, dancing like fireflies. Some glowed softly. Some burned bright. All of them waited. Cly took a deep breath, letting the air settle in her lungs, letting the quiet settle in her bones. Kemi stood behind her, holding a lantern of her own. "Do you know all their names?" she asked. "No," Cly said. "But they know mine." And with that, she stepped forward. She lifted her lantern. And all around her, the spirits lifted theirs in return. A sky full of stars. A river full of light. Cly closed her eyes. And for the first time in her life, she smiled. The end.